sketching people. Yes, that is what we are doing today. So what I'm going to be showing you is a really simple process for sketching people. And we'll use very similar techniques as ever, same techniques, same ideas, but applying them to a slightly different subject. So what are we doing? Well, it was supposed to be sort of 4-step process, but I end up adding a 5th step at the end, and you'll see why. So forgive me if through the video I'm sort of going, oh, this 4-step process, when actually it becomes 5. But the 5th is sort of optional. Well, all the steps are optional. The 5th one just adds a little extra something, and I think it was a really good decision to jump in and add that extra little bit of work. And it really goes to show that whenever I talk about these processes, I say, oh, this is 3 steps, 4 steps, 5 steps. It's flexible because these are frameworks, and from the framework, from what happens on your page, sometimes we want to adapt, we want to change, or it's not quite, done what we wanted to, and so we end up having to do something a little bit different. But nonetheless, we can still end up happy, we can still end up, that surprise, that thing where it's not done what we expected. It's just as often something really cool, really interesting. So don't let it stress you, but just go on and enjoy yourself and see what happens. So with that, we're going to do this little people sketch. As ever, if you enjoy my stuff, please do let me know in the comments, or let me know if you think there's something I should have done differently. Do subscribe if you want to see more. And if you like my style, if you think it's fun, interesting, whatever, then I've got an in-depth course on sketchloose.co.uk that you might want to check out. Now, without further ado, let us go on and enjoy ourselves on this YouTube video. What are we using? Well, basically we need a waterproof pen. I'm using a Lamy All-Star pen, and this has got some waterproof black ink. This is called Carbon ink, Carbon ink by Platinum. Again, all this stuff is linked on my website with a link below, so do have a look if you're interested. I'm using a square sketchbook. This is by Handmuller. It's got lovely paper in, 300, I believe 300 grams per square metre, cold press watercolour paper. I've just got a really cheap size 10 watercolour brush, don't need anything special for this. And I'm using essentially three primary colours. I've got a yellow, a blue and a red. None of them quite a primary colour, so actually my red is quinacridone coral, a really bright vivid pink. My yellow, nickel titanate yellow, it's almost a luminous yellow, really interesting colour. And then Mayan blue genuine, which is a current favourite of mine, really granular deep blue. We don't need to be really clever with our colours when we're sketching people. We don't need to colour match, we don't need to get skin tones right. We can just have fun with it. So we're going to have fun with just 3 colours today. So with that, I'm just going to get things ready and we can start. So now we'll start with stage 1. Stage 1, you need your pen, nice blank piece of paper, and we're just going to grab our silhouette. So we'll start at the head because that sets the scale, and make sure don't make the head too big, because as soon as the head's too big, everything else is going to fall off the page. And we don't need any fancy rules about proportions or anything like that, because what we're doing is drawing what we see, just like we do with anything else. We don't learn fancy rules about proportions of buildings. We don't need to know fancy rules about proportions of humans either, because what we can do is we can draw them as we see them. We can split them into shapes and measure or comparatively measure. We don't need to have a predefined idea. Those predefined ideas are useful for checking if we want to just find out where we might have gone a little wrong, or they're useful for drawing from imagination, but we don't need to stick to rules to draw people, to draw from observation. So all I'm doing here is I'm going round nice and slowly, nice and carefully, slowly for me and carefully for me at least, and grabbing our silhouette. And what we'll find is actually a human. Our eyes are so good at working them out that our human will make sense, even just with a loose silhouette. Remember, we're sketching, so this isn't about being perfect. It's not about, being able to recognise him and pick him out in a line out after we finished our sketch. It's about having the idea of this chap, having the idea, the energy, the feel, the key features. And there you go, that's our silhouette. Now, stage 1 flows immediately into stage 2. So what I could have done is kept my pen on the paper and just kept going. Because now what we're doing, we've got our silhouette, and we can come and we can find some details. Details like a suggestion of a nose, suggestion of these glasses. We could do a little suggestion of the mouth. We can find areas and shapes of shadow. Certainly things like the shoulder and where it meets the body. And then the idea of these arms, which you sort of got coming down. We can't really see where they finish, so we don't need to draw where they finish. We can just suggest it. We can see a little dark edge here, can't we? So we find that shape as well. We can come down again and again. We can kind of get a slither of a back leg, so we find that little shape. And then we've got these kind of textures coming in. Got the little white bottom of the trainer. Kind of see this leg going in front of that trainer. And that's it. That's our details. That's all we really need to add. So we've done step 1, step 2. We've got another person. So we'll go back. So unlike many of the other processes I show you, we're kind of going step 1, step 2, and then going to step back. And for our girl in the background, do the same thing again. Now this time we've got some cheats because we can measure across. We can go, look, well, top of her head is here. So this is proper observational drawing. Top of her head's there, and then actually her face comes in and it finishes just below his armpit. Next here, then we got this funny little hand coming in. Then the coat comes out, and the coat comes out and it's level with here at its furthest out part. Then it comes back and down. Now we just got a long straight line, and her feet are at his ankles. So much quicker to do our second person because we can cheat. We don't have to observe her properly. We can sort of stick with our observations of the man that we've done slowly and carefully. So as you sort of build up a scene, perhaps you had loads and loads of people, actually it gets easier and easier. Not harder and harder, but easier and easier, because you've got all these other reference points that you can use. And again, it's not a perfect image, is it? It's not a portrait. We've not spent 4 hours on it. What we've spent is a few minutes and got something representative, something fun. And it's got the feel of these people. And there's mistakes, aren't there? They're too far apart. Maybe his head's a bit too big, but it's fine. There's mistakes, but you also get the idea. It's a sketch, and it's good fun. And we're going to continue that fun. So, step 2, we start to pull out those details. Now, we've got a bit more that we can find here with her arm, for example. We don't want to overdo it, so just pick out those details we want. Her head here, got a clear mouth, and just a suggestion of a nose and an eye. Then lots of hair, which we can just do with little up and down lines. And what else have we got? We've got like the separation of the t-shirt here, going into the baggy sort of trousers, which we can suggest with a few more lines. And there we are, done. Now, if we want to add a bit of context to these people, whilst we've got our pen out, why don't we just do that? We can get this perspective-laden street in, and we can just get that suggestion of, where are these people as well? And we can just do that with really loose lines, really gentle, because what we don't want to do is overwhelm these people. We want the people to be the star of our sketch, not these buildings. But we can still suggest enough of these buildings to give the idea that this is like a narrow street, which fits, doesn't it? It fits with this aesthetic. And I think even with this loose sketch, we've got a lot of attitude, a lot of the feel of who these guys are, or at least who they are modelling to be in this image. And there you go. So now we have step 1, step 2, where we've picked out their silhouette, we've picked out some details. Step 3, a little bit of hatching. So look at the shadows and the light on our people, and look how when we picked out details, we picked out shapes, we picked out segments, haven't we? Picked up planes, different areas, and now we can use those planes to apply our hatching in a way that sort of gives these people a bit more of a 3D feel. So, for example, there's some darkness in this shape here. So, real simple bit of hatching. Similarly, there's darkness here. Really simple bit of hatching. There's a bit of darkness going down the back. Bit of darkness in her elbow. and then also under her hair, and even actually a lot of her face. So really delicate bits of hatching can just suddenly pull apart these shapes and bring a much more 3D feel. Anything else? Yeah, under her ankles. Maybe that's enough for now, so let's move on to our chap now. He's got a lot more shadow, so if we just find all the shadow first with this single direction of hatching, and we can find there's an awful lot of it for him. Going into the shoes as well. So in here also the front of his face is quite dark, and the glasses. His hair's got a little bit in, but actually maybe his hair's something we leave lighter. A little bit in the ears. And then also this. So there's so much shadow, isn't there? But to double down on that, let's double down on our hatching. So where are the darkest shadows? Because now we can create even more shape by varying those shadows. The darkest shadows for me are sort of under the trousers here, in the front here. There's actually a little bit at the back I missed initially. We could go mad, we could do loads and loads, but we don't want to overwhelm again. We don't want to overwhelm our people. So let's leave it with a suggestive amount of shadow. And that's all it is. Step 3 is in a matter of seconds to maybe a minute or two, step 3 is done. So now we've got an ink sketch, and we could leave it there, couldn't we? We could leave it there because this is already pretty interesting. It's already got that attitude, it's got that feel. It's not perfect, but it's got these people. For me, it's got the essence of these people on the page. But let's take it to another level. Let's have some real fun with it. Real fun, of course, means some really loose colours. And I've just got these 3 primary colours, and let's see how we can use those really loosely to have fun with these people. So let's separate them out. Let's separate out our people by applying a different colour scheme to the 2 of them. So he's more moody, isn't he? He's got a lot of this dark colour. So let's use our dark Mayan blue, and let's just bring it down. Let's give his clothes that dark Mayan blue feel. And the Mayan blue has a lot of texture, so we're going to create something really interesting just by applying this simple colour. And of course, I love pooling things around, I love linking things, so I'm going to give this watercolour a link across to our lady here. And perhaps just a little touch of water in there to give a bit of variation. And then for her, what we're going to do, well, let's take our yellow. She's got that lovely sort of cream coloured top on, hasn't she? So let's take this bright yellow, nickel titanate yellow, and let's touch that in here. And suddenly she's going to really pull apart from our chap, because this is a very bright colour. But even though it's bright, it's still got tones. You're still implying shadow. You're still implying a value by putting in this very bright colour. Going to come back a little bit more blue and just reintroduce a little bit of grubbiness to our path, for example. And then what we're going to do with this pink, well, why don't we just use this pink as a sort of really bold colour to show where face and where skin is. And again, we can encourage this to sort of spread and move. We don't have to leave it in one place. And if we just take in some water, we can just move it around, let it splodge and billow, and just doesn't have to stay in one place, is essentially what I'm trying to say. We could do a few splashes into this to add that bit more texture as well, and also spreads that pink. It stops it being all in one place. Now we want a bit of tone elsewhere. And why do I say that? Well, what we want is to show the contrast between our people and the background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just mix a deep sort of purple colour here. So we've got something a bit different. And with that, I'm going to find some of our buildings, and I'm just going to apply that tone. And by having that contrast between them, suddenly, hopefully, our people will pop forward, they'll stand out. And I'm okay with these colours linking and leaking. That's, one of the things I really love about watercolours. I'm even just going to drag some of this pink colour straight across our figure here as well. Because all this is just a really loose and light flow of colour. And then perhaps I need a little bit more of our dark blue, so I'll just pop a little bit more onto my palette, just a tiny bit. And what are we going to do with this? Well, let's get those last touches of contrast, really. This is our darkest colour. So just by taking it, we can now find where it actually needs to be much darker. His hair needs to be darker, doesn't it? His back needs to be darker. That's just the front here. A little bit more underneath, just a little bit darker, and his shoes. And for her, let's introduce some of this blue again, just to bring our two people together. And then a little bit of this yellow for him, and maybe in his hair. Look at that bright sort of yellow feel in his hair, and on the back of his arms here. And again, maybe just use some of this colour we've now got to just bring in another bit of tone elsewhere. And there we go. So now we can let that dry and just see if there's anything else we want to do, anything else we want to play with our little people. Of course, I can't help myself, can I? So I'm going to do a few splashes even as I say we're not going to do anything else in this step. I'm going to do a few splashes and have a bit of fun. And there we go. I'm really going to stop there, let it dry, and then we'll see what we've got. So we've now got a lovely dry bit of paper, and that's our 4-step process done. We have a really loose, interesting sketch. Now we could leave it there, or we could try a little bit more fun with our pen if you want. So this is kind of an optional 5th step. And why would we do this? Well, just to bring back a little bit more clarity, depending on how mad you've gone with the colours, and I've gone fairly mad with the colours, so we can bring back a bit more clarity and just reintroduce some of those important concepts we had before. So let's start by refinding our silhouette. And this is a much quicker process again than before, because we are still observing, we're still making sure that we are doing what we want to compared to our reference, but we've got our guidelines, we've already done this, and we're feeling confident at this point. This also gives us the opportunity to respond to our watercolours, so we can find where the watercolours have done something, and we can use that to create a shape. So it's not just observation, it's also responsiveness to our sort of fun and lively colours. Come down and grab our feet, and then we can move across to our other chap, and again we're responding to our watercolours, we are emboldening, restructuring a little bit. And as we come up, we can find how our watercolours have responded, and we can find shapes that they have made. So for example, this white area we can outline, and it becomes a part of the shape, becomes a part of the natural shape. Grab his neck, and then just up to reaffirm his sort of hair. And there we go. And now the people, hopefully you can see the people are jumping forward at us again. If we want, we can reaffirm steps 1 and 2. We could do a little bit more hatching, for example. I'm going to leave the people unhatched, but we talked a bit in our watercolours about the contrast, pulling the people out by having them contrast well against the background. Now they contrast really well against this white. I'm going to leave that. But what we could do, look at this wall over here. She's really bright. This wall's really dark, and we don't quite get that yet. So really simple way is to just apply that hatching again. So a single layer of very simple hatching. And suddenly that shows that there's a different sort of plane of existence, and they're not connected. And hopefully that pulls her apart just a little bit more. What we can do is we can even double down, make that thinner hatching, because we can see it actually gets darker and darker as we go further left. And perhaps we even want to triple down and really make this a fine and very different hatching to what's in our people. What else could we do? Well, we could have tiny little details in the background, but now it's really a sort of fancy-free and footloose kind of place. We are just really trying not to overdo anything, really trying to hold back and make sure we don't do something we regret. So maybe just a couple of really key details like this. I feel like this drain pipe that comes down, that's quite key. It explains a lot about the situation. Maybe reaffirming these key perspective lines, but also adding they're a bit straight, so adding a bit of looseness to them. And maybe that's all we do. So I'm just going to finish there. So I'm going to put my initials on and call this people sketching. So at the end of our 5 steps, this is what I hope that you will feel confident in achieving: a really loose sketch using similar principles to our normal urban sketching. A lot of observation and a lot of looseness to get the feel of people, get the energy, the vibe, whilst not worrying too much about the specifics and without needing to know any of those rules or needing to learn. Just using our observational skills, we can create these really fun, loose sketches of people. So thank you everyone for watching my little sketching videos. If you enjoy my content, please do subscribe to my channel because it makes me really, really happy. Thanks again.